Hello, savvy entrepreneur. Now, I understand that some of you may be listening to this podcast episode on the go and you haven't seen the title of today's episode, which is How I Had a 20K Month with Just 20 Minutes a Day on Facebook. And I'm like giving myself the ick even just reading that title out. But I want to reassure you that number one, it's true. And number two, I'm not just sharing the outcome, i.e. 20K in 20 minutes a day. Oh, look at me. But and I'm not sharing that as a flex. I'm not sharing that to make you feel like you're doing it wrong because you missed out on this silly little one secret that I'll only let you know what that is once you actually pay me money. I'm not doing that at all. I want to share with you in this podcast episode exactly what I did day by day in order to create that 20K of income. Not only am I going to do that, before I share with you the strategy, I'm going to acknowledge and unpack all of the things that meant the strategy worked for me, because I think sometimes online marketers can gloss over some of those details. So I apologize deeply and profusely for such a clickbaity title for the podcast episode. But I do want to reassure you that I am not doing this to create any kind of agitation or any kind of FOMO. I am literally going to walk you through this strategy step by step. This is episode number 389 of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. It's also day 9 of Tashmas, which means today's episode comes with a gift, which I will share with you at the end. If you'd like to access the links and show notes for today's episode, then please come and check those out over at tashcorbin.com/389, because it's episode number 389. And let's dive into this, shall we?
I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast.
So, as I said in the intro, I'm actually going to start this episode by letting you know like some of the key important factors that went into my first ever 20K month as a business owner, because I think it's very important for me to acknowledge and unpack all of those pieces so that I don't create this weird expectation that if you just follow the strategy, you'll also just magically get that result. Because I know that we're not all starting from the same position. We're not all having the same experience of growing our businesses. But I also think that once you hear how simple and straightforward the strategy was and how it was able to create that result, I think for a lot of people, this could result in some simplification of your marketing. I think that this could result in you getting some more results from the time that you're putting into your marketing strategy, especially on social media. And so I hope that it's really valuable for you, even if all it does is show you how to create more conversion from the audience you already have. It will have done a lot of its job and it will have given you a lot of value. So I think that this is going to be a really helpful episode, regardless of where you're at in your business journey. Okay, so first and foremost, I do want to acknowledge that I was already into my 6th month in my business. I had already been on Facebook at least 4 days a week consistently since I started my business. So the first time I had a 20K month was December 2013, and I started my business in June 2013 when I came back from my overseas holiday. And so I'd already been consistently on Facebook at least 4 days a week for that whole time. It was rare that I'd take a week off being on Facebook. And the strategy that I'm going to map out was actually the strategy that I used from very early in my business. So I'd consistently been doing it for about 6 months before I got to my first 20K month. I also come from a marketing and business background. I have a degree in business and international business, and I've previously worked as a mentor and coach for CEOs of small businesses, CEOs of large businesses, management companies. I was a business planning consultant. So I've had a lot of experience in business. But I do want to say I wasn't savvy at social media when I started my business. I used Facebook for social reasons and social uses only. And I didn't really understand the social media business kind of experience or what to do. And because I started my business with no money, having just been on a European holiday, very clever, Tash. I can't believe how naive I was. I didn't have the money to hire someone to help me figure it out. I didn't have the money to buy courses. I had to watch YouTube videos, go to free webinars, follow marketing people, and I created a couple of free mastermind groups with peers so that we could help each other, so that I could figure it out. I definitely was a leading learner in the model of business that I was creating, because I was helping people with their social media marketing, and I was helping people using the things that I had just learned and applied myself. So sometimes people say to me, oh, I just don't think I am enough of an expert, or, I'm not the most prolific in the industry. And to that I say, just be the leading learner. That's exactly my approach to my business. So at the time, I had around 300 followers on my Facebook page, and I was a member of a few entrepreneurial/business Facebook groups. I think it was about 8 different Facebook groups that I was in at a time, but there are 2 in which I was very active, and they're the 2 that I remember the names of, right? So they were the 2 that I mostly spent my time in. I was in those groups because I found them really helpful for getting advice and getting my questions answered when it came to using MailChimp as my email service provider, for example, or understanding how to set up webinars on instant teleseminar. We did not have Zoom. And so I was in those groups. They were more like business sort of peer support groups that were hosted by other people. It wasn't my Facebook group. And they allowed promotions on certain days. So one group that I was in had promo day on a Tuesday, and another had it on Wednesday. They were the 2 that I was most active in. And then a couple of others had a promo day like on a Thursday or Friday. But the ones that I didn't really get a lot of traction in, I didn't really post in consistently, were the ones where you could only put your offer in the comments of someone else's post. Like the admin would put up here's where you put your offers, and everyone would put their offers underneath. And I found no one really trawled through those comments. Everyone just dumped their promos into the comments and then didn't really read anyone else's. So the ones that I found the most helpful were the ones where I could share a promo on my own post, but it was usually just one day a week that we were allowed to share promotional posts. I had based my marketing and business strategy up until that point on experimenting and testing. As I said, I didn't have a business coach, or I wasn't in any kind of paid experience where I was getting advice on how to grow a business on Facebook. I was literally just like trying to figure it out for myself. I had done a course on how to use social media to grow your business, but it was really yucky. And the things that they were teaching, I just didn't want to do. I found it very invasive. And I thought if someone did that to me, I would be really, really grossed out by it. I wouldn't buy from them. And so something that course did do for me, though, was to show me like what it was that I needed to achieve, but I needed to find a more consent-based way to do it, or a less invasive way to do it. So I did a lot of asking and listening. I did a lot of interviewing people who might be in my target market. I asked a lot of questions, not only on my own Facebook page, but also in those Facebook communities in which I was a member. And in doing all of that, I'd found some very simple but effective ways to make sales. But I also recognize now, looking back, that because I spent 6 months being deeply curious about my audience and my niche, being deeply curious about what was going on for them and what they needed help with, and then going out and learning those things so that I could help them with it, I had created just such strong foundations. So I had a very validated and motivated niche. I knew that my niche weren't just interested in getting advice and help to reach more people on social media and make sales through social media and online channels, I knew they were hungry to even pay for it. They were motivated to do the work. They were motivated to learn. They were motivated to find solutions because they could see that it would really help them to grow their business much faster. And at that point in time, in 2013, there weren't as many people teaching marketing strategies for social media. There weren't as many people teaching really wild and out there strategies. And also there weren't as many platforms. So the main platform for online business was absolutely Facebook. I didn't have an Instagram account at that time. I didn't, there wasn't TikTok. There wasn't even, that was pre-Periscope. Twitter was probably the other major platform, and LinkedIn was also promoted as being quite a popular platform. Most of the strategy around Twitter was follow people and then they'll follow you back and then unfollow them. I found that really, really painful. And so because of the strategies that were being taught for LinkedIn and Twitter, I didn't want to do those. I just didn't use them. So I had a LinkedIn profile, but I kept that focused on consulting work because I was still a qualified workplace investigator and available to do those. I was still open to doing short-term consulting roles or projects for people who I had in my network. So I didn't even change my LinkedIn profile to talk about the online business stuff that I was doing. I left it all as though I was a consultant, but just a self-employed consultant. And on LinkedIn, you were supposed to connect with people who you didn't know, but you had a connection to, and then send them a direct message to suggest a cup of coffee over Skype at the time, and let's help each other achieve our goals, basically. And so I didn't like the idea of cold calling and cold messaging via LinkedIn. I didn't like the idea of following people just to lure them into following me back and then unfollowing them, so that it was really important at that point in time, I'm not really sure why, to have more people following you than you were following. That was kind of seen as the metric that you would be measured by. I mean, some people are still very fixated on that, but I don't think it's as relevant these days. And so that is part of the reason why I just decided to focus on Facebook, because there wasn't a lot of competition for my attention. And so I also acknowledge that these days there are a lot more platforms to choose from. I do want to say, though, even in the work that I do with clients, I still very rarely see a business or a niche where Facebook or Instagram isn't the primary platform that I would recommend. But I do know that for some specific niches, you may use other platforms rather than Facebook or Instagram. And I definitely still recommend, regardless of which you choose, that you only choose one. Now, I had that validated and motivated niche. I also, because I knew so much about my ideal clients and my niche, my messaging was very strong. My messaging was super strong at the time. Oh my gosh, it just started really raining. I hope there's not too much background noise here. So my messaging was super strong. I could speak about the value proposition of working with me really effectively. Also, by this stage in my business, I had worked with so many clients one-on-one that I could see the step-by-step process that most of them needed to go through. So I was able to talk very confidently about the steps that we needed to take in order for someone to be able to attract new clients from online sources. I was able to very confidently help people see why focusing on just getting more followers wasn't necessarily all that they needed to do in order to achieve their bigger goal, which was to make sales on social media. And so I was able to bridge people very effectively from being fixated on, I just need lots of followers, instead to focus on, okay, yes, getting lots of followers is great, but how do you turn those followers into paying clients? And what if you could turn people into paying clients without them having to follow you? What if you could reach audiences that you didn't actually have have yet, i.e. borrow audiences from other people, and that could result in sales so that you could pay to grow your own audience by paying for ads or sponsoring events or using other strategies. And so I had a very strong messaging by this 6 month of my business. Inside and out, I knew what my clients experienced. I knew what my niche could see as getting in their way. I knew how they misdiagnosed a lot of their problems. I knew what they got fixated on. And I also knew exactly how to get them to the point where they were confidently sharing on social media, confidently emailing their list each week, and confidently showing up and making sales in their business. And so that was very much proven. And additionally, my offer was spectacular. So I had already sold my VIP package, which was a 6 month package. I had a 1 month and a 6 month option. And I'd already sold the 6 month option to 12 people by the time I got to my 6 month in business. It was $2,500 at the time. And I'd already sold 1 month packages to probably 8 or 9 people by then. And then I also sold single sessions, which were a 2-hour session focused on one specific element of their business. And I would have sold over 100 of those in the 6 months leading up to it. So I had a very strong, validated and motivated niche. I had very effective messaging, and I knew people loved my offer. Whenever I had a conversation with someone about the 1 month or the 6 month package, I would convert that more than 70% of the time. And I didn't convert it because I pushed them into it. I converted because I had created that offer to meet their exact needs, and I knew what their exact needs were because I was very good at asking good questions. Remember, I was very much focused on asking and listening, and I crafted the specifics of the offer and what we would focus on in their specific package to exactly what they were looking for and exactly what I could see as being the gap as well. So I was very good at that packaging of my offer and qualifying people, so I was good at conversion as well. So the reason why I share this is because a lot of people think that they have a marketing problem, when in fact they have a business foundations problem. Their niche isn't necessarily specific enough or validated, or they're speaking to an unmotivated niche. Their messaging isn't clear and strong. They don't know how to bridge their audience, or no one actually wants the offer that they've packaged up. And if I had done this with an offer that no one wanted, or I didn't know how to speak to my niche with understanding of their situation and resonance and bridging them, it wouldn't have created this result, right? This result wasn't achieved because it was a good marketing strategy on its own. This result was achieved because this marketing strategy was applied on top of very solid business foundations. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and I wanted to explain that before I walked you through the 20-minute a day strategy, because I think for a lot of people, they think marketing will solve their lack of sales when they have a messaging issue or they have an offer that people actually don't get excited about and aren't excited to purchase. And so if you're listening to this and that's bringing some things up for you, like, oh, I don't know if my message is validated, I don't know if my offer is something people are hungry for, then I do want to reassure you that I created those strong foundations whilst also doing this 20 minutes a day strategy. It was through doing the 20 minutes a day strategy that I gained access to people in my niche, that I gained insights from those people, and that I was able to improve and narrow my niche down even further. I was able to really nail that messaging and that offer. So it's not that you have to create your foundations in isolation on your own first and then go out and engage with an audience. They need to be created in concert with each other, in tandem with each other. So even if you're not sure that you have a validated and motivated niche or strong messaging or an offer that people want, That doesn't mean you should delay showing up on social media. You should delay experimenting with your marketing strategy. It just means that it's not about expecting your marketing to solve foundational issues. It's not about you just pick a niche, pick an offer, pick some key phrases and then go and throw them at the internet as far and wide as possible and expect them to work when they haven't been refined based on deep insight and connection with your ideal clients. So I wanted to share all of that first before I shared the strategy. So let's now dive into, well, what did I do with my 20 minutes a day that was so effective at attracting and converting clients from Facebook? So the first thing that I did was I had a Facebook page and I posted on that page every day. So every day I would open up Facebook on my computer. So that was also a really good boundary that I had. So if I was on Facebook on my computer, I was working on my business. If I was on Facebook on my phone, that was social time. And so whenever I wanted to do my 20 minutes a day, I would do that on my computer. It meant I stayed more focused. I didn't get distracted by the feed as much. And also I could work much faster on my computer than on my phone. So I would go straight to my Facebook page whenever I opened Facebook each day, and I would do a post for the day. And I didn't batch up and pre-schedule posts on Facebook for a very long time. I don't even think there was a native scheduler in Facebook at the time, to be honest. But I did go to my Facebook page and post on my Facebook page every single day. And so I would cycle between different types of posts. Some days I'd share an offer. Some days I'd share a piece of advice. Some days I'd ask a question. Some days I'd just share a photo of me. Some days I'd share a YouTube video that I had made because I did start a YouTube channel when I started my business as well. Some days I also did write blog articles very haphazardly on my website. And so some days I'd just share a promo of my latest blog and a link to it. So I didn't share offers every single day. I shared a post every single day. And I did mix those posts up quite well. I actually felt far more comfortable sharing not offer posts. So I'd rather do posts that gave people a free tip or helped people to work something out. Or sometimes also if I was working with a client and they would say, oh, how do I structure my newsletter when I send it out each week? And I would say to them, oh, I've got a little one-page resource that will help you with that. I'll send it to you in an hour. And then I go and make the little one-page resource and I'd send it to them. But then I'd also go and share it on my Facebook page. And I would say, oh, I was just in a session with a client and they said they weren't sure on how they were going to structure their newsletter. And so I gave them this template. If you would like it, here it is. And I would just upload it straight onto Facebook. I think you couldn't upload PDFs, so I had to upload it as like a PNG at the time. Like, when people complain that they can't do things on social media these days, or people complain about Facebook, I think, oh, you don't even know. I definitely sound like one of those people who's like, back in my day, because we really had a lot less of those automations and tools and a lot less functionality back then. We also did have a lot less competition and a lot less ads in our news feeds and a lot more reach organically. So I do acknowledge the privilege that I also have from having started my business over 10 years ago. Okay, so the first thing I would do in my 20 minutes was go and do a post on my Facebook page. And I would try and do that in under 3 minutes. So I would try and just go. Don't overthink it. Just share something. Just ask something. And the reason why I did that was because I was really experimenting with and playing with like efficiency and productivity stuff. And I was big on the Pareto principle. And so, 20% of what you do gets you 80% of your result. And so I knew that that first 3 minutes, I would get 80% of the way there. And that was good enough. So I would just go in and write a post really quickly and share it straight on my Facebook page. Then what I would do is I would go into some of these Facebook groups that I was in very regularly. And I actually had a little spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet, it had my page at the top and then the link to my Facebook page to go and post on it. And then it had the groups that I was in, and I put them in order from my favorites to my least favorites. And I put the name of the group in the first column, and then in the next column, I'd put the link to the group in the spreadsheet so I could go straight there. And then across the top, I had the days of the week. And then for each group, I'd written what their theme day was for the group. All of the groups that I was in had theme days. So you could share your posts, and as long as you used the hashtag and you shared based on that theme day. And I found that really, really helpful for me because it guided the conversation. If I was in Facebook communities where there weren't theme days, I always struggled what to say or what to post about, because my default would be, well, I'll promote something, but I didn't want to promote stuff all the time in those groups. And so I actually found that groups without theme days or without that structure, I found it really challenging. And so I decided to focus on the ones that did have the theme days, because then on the offer days and the market days, everyone was in the group because they were there to promote their offers. And so I had far more visibility of my offers when everyone was there for the offer day than I would have had if I just posted randomly on any day of the week, because anything could be posted at any time. So I found it far more helpful to post within the offer days. And so I would just literally work my way through that list of groups. And within that 20 minutes, however far I got, that was my Facebook done for the day. So if I went to my first group and it was tip day, okay, great, I'll share a little tip. I would then, once I'd shared my tip, I would scroll through the news feed and I would comment on maybe 5 or 6 different posts, supporting people, answering people's questions, answering people's call outs for market research. Sometimes I would find someone had to ask a question like, how do I do XYZ in MailChimp? And I would very quickly go and look it up in MailChimp help desk, because it was very straightforward. A lot of people didn't know how to use MailChimp help desk. And then I would go and answer and give them how to do it in MailChimp. So that's the whole leading learning principle, right? Like, I may not have known the answer off the top of my head, but I knew exactly how to find it. And so I was a very helpful person in those communities. And that really was my goal, was to be very active and very helpful. I wanted to be seen as someone who supported the group administrators. I wanted to be seen as someone who supported the group members. And so I just decided that I'd show up and be the most helpful member of the group. And so I would do that, and then I'd move on to the next group. Okay, in that group, it's the offer day. So I'm going to share an offer for my 2-hour one-on-one session, and I would put the price and everything on there and what it would be focused on. And then again, I would go and find a bunch of posts that I could comment on and like a bunch of posts. And the other thing that I also did was I had a list of people from the groups that I was in that I thought I could really help based on the questions that they'd asked or based on the type of business that they had. And so it was sort of like a little manifesting list. So I had a list of those people like, oh, I could definitely help Deborah. I could help Kerry. I could help this person. And so I'd just write their names down as a way of like energetically connecting to them. And that also meant that when I saw their name pop up in the feed in the group, I would recognize it and I would be sure to comment on their post. I would be sure to help them if they had a question. And at the very bare minimum, I would like their post in the group as well. So some days I would get to 2 or 3 of those groups on my list. Some days I would get through all 8 of them. Some days I'd only do the first one. But every day I posted on my page and I showed up in at least one Facebook group consistently. Now, that was my marketing on Facebook done for the day. Done for the day. So what I also did when I did my 20 minutes, and most days I did that first thing in the morning. That was the first thing I did when I started working on my business. So once that was done, I also had a really good energetic boundary of, well, that is done now. I need to give that time and space to reach people and do its job. So I'm going to close down out of Facebook now, and I am going to work on the future of my business, or I'm going to work on something that's a little longer term. So it also was really good for me because it stopped me from kind of getting stuck in that scroll for hours and hours on social media, because I just did my little 20 minutes in the morning and then I went on with my day and did something else. So at that time, in that 6 month of my business, I did have quite a few like client sessions. I never really went over 12 client sessions a week, especially if I had a few of the 2 hours, because a 2 hour session is a big thing. I tried not to do more than 2 of those or 3 of those in a day. And so I generally would have a client session or maybe 2 most weekdays. But there were plenty of days where I didn't have any client facing time, but I really focused on like other ways to grow my business or create connection or make sales, that didn't revolve around like just posting more regularly on Facebook or putting a higher volume of content on Facebook. So I would go and write a blog post, or I would go and record a couple of videos, or I would do my follow-ups. So I had a list of people that I'd done single sessions with, or I'd had sales calls with, and they got a follow-up from me as well. I usually tried to do that on Fridays, follow-up Fridays. But if I didn't know what to do, follow-ups was always my default. Oh, well, I'll see who I can follow up with. Because I knew the more consistently I followed up with people, the more likely it was that I would make a sale that day. And I was very, very motivated to make a sale. So that was what I did for 20 minutes a day. And as I said, I'd been doing that for I'd been doing it consistently for about 3 months. I hadn't quite finessed the strategy for the first few months of my business, and I was still experimenting and playing with things. But once I came up with this little system, this little routine, it just felt so spacious and abundant to be able to know that my Facebook marketing was done within 20 minutes in the morning. And it also gave me a really good balance between short-term focus and longer-term focus in my business as well. So this brings me to my next point, which is that marketing on Facebook on its own is not how I had a 20K month. That marketing on Facebook was coupled with other longer term strategies and high connection strategies in order for it to actually convert people into clients and to get to that 20K month. So I consistently increased my prices. I also emailed my mailing list every week. I was very quick with my follow-ups. So as I said, I did follow-ups. I also did sales conversations. I blogged. I recorded YouTube videos. So the longer term stuff I was still kind of experimenting with, but it was part of what I was doing in my business. So I wasn't just doing 20 minutes on social media and then going and sipping cocktails on the beach. I was still doing other things. That social media strategy was part of a bigger ecosystem of what it was that I was doing. But that was doing my Facebook marketing every day. It was just that 20 minutes a day. So what sorts of things did people buy from me? Well, at the time, as I said, I had a 6-month package, which was $2,500. I also had my 1 month, but I also had been consistently offering my 2-hour intensive. So they were a 2-hour session. And they were one of the absolute winners in my marketing strategy because they allowed me to really help someone with something that they wanted to focus on or an area of their business they were wanting to learn about and get set up. But also they did really lead into other work with me if people wanted to get that extra support longer term. And so I had started out, when I first started my business, I started offering 2-hour sessions at $97 each. And then sometimes I would even do them I haven't had any clients this week, or I've only had 2 clients this week. So if anyone wants to do a 2-hour with me at 8 o'clock on Friday morning, you can have it for $50. And so I did sell some of them at discounts. But then I very quickly started to sell sell out each week because I only ever offered 3 a week or 5 a week, just depending on how busy I was and how many clients I already had booked in. And so they had very limited spaces, and I stuck to and had good boundaries around those limited spaces. And so if it got to the end of the week and I still hadn't sold my target number, I would just discount them. But I was starting to get to the point where I didn't have any left over. I was selling them out. And so I increased the price from $97 to $147. And then a couple of months later, I increased it from $147 to $247. And then in December of 2013, which was my 6th month of my business, that was when I made an announcement to my audience that I was going to increase the price of my 2-hour VIP intensives to $495 each, but they could pre-purchase up to 20 of those to be used within the next year. So what I was doing was incentivizing people to buy them up front by allowing them to access as many as they wanted, up to 20 at that current price. So I was creating a big cash injection for myself, for my business, and also then increasing the price, like basically doubling the potential income that I could make from my business by doubling my price. And so I told every single person that I'd ever done a single session with and was happy to work with again. I told every previous client that I was happy to work with again. Of course, there were several that I didn't want to do any more sessions with, but that's okay. I also let my mailing list know, and I sent out the announcement. Then I sent out a reminder in which I talked through the different types of things we could do on a 2-hour session. And then I also sent a final reminder the day before the offer closed and the prices doubled. I also shared it on my social media, in the Facebook groups that I had been active in as part of my 20 minutes a day. And so I shared it far and wide. I was very, very present and active, and I shared it as far and wide as I possibly could. So I did experience like a really big surge in my income. And to be honest with you, I was expecting that the following months would be particularly poor because I would have so many people who'd pre-purchased sessions that I would have actually like dried out my market. And then not only that, my prices were doubling. And so people who had missed out or hadn't bought in December weren't just going to buy a month later and pay double the price, but actually they did. So my January, my following month, was actually a 15K month as well. And I was able to sustain pretty decent income even though I had doubled my prices. So I had actually expected to have to cope with some particularly tricky low-income months, but that didn't end up being the case. The only time that I ended up having some tricky low-income months was when I allowed an online marketer to convince me that selling one-to-one, i.e. trading time for money, was a terrible business strategy because your income was capped. My income was not capped, actually. You can always increase your prices. And she convinced me that in order to really have a successful business, if I ever wanted to have a 50K month just like this person, or a 50K month just like that person, or a 75K launch just like this person, what I had to do was create it once but sell it multiple times, i.e. create an online course and sell that instead. And so I thought that was really great advice, and I thought, yep, this sounds perfect. So I bought the person's program, and 3 months later, I had an $800 month. So it wasn't the best situation. It wasn't the best idea, but I certainly didn't suck the income out of my business by focusing on one-to-one or focusing on high connection, high conversion marketing strategies. I actually wish I had never gone to that person's webinar and I just stayed doing what I was doing for a lot longer because, when you find a rhythm and a routine and a strategy that works really well, like I encourage you, hang out in that goodness for as long as you can. I think sometimes when we achieve a certain milestone or a certain result or level in our business, we're itchy and hungry to get to the next one. But we've got to like embody and normalize and stabilize and find our feet at each of those stages. And so if I don't regret a lot of the mistakes that I made in my business, but if there was one part of my business journey that I could go back and whisper lovingly into the ear of 2013 Tash, it would be, or January 2014 Tash, it would be telling myself to just keep doing what I'm doing, refine it, systemize it as much as possible, start to scale it to larger and larger audiences. And if you get booked out, just put your prices up again. I never really got to the point where I got to experience that feeling of selling packages and selling one-to-one and feeling like I'd totally nailed it. Even in my December, I didn't think that I had like, oh my gosh, I've totally made it. Everything's amazing. And I totally now am like the world's best business mentor. I had a lot of wobbles because I was worried that I had just robbed my future sales and brought them forward, and that I was going to have low income months for quite a while to come. And I didn't end up having low income months for quite a while to come. I did quite well. And so I really did have a model that was very sustainable, was very scalable by increasing prices. And I was never I've got too many clients. I never, ever, ever complained about having too many clients because I had a lot of capacity. And I didn't do a lot of client sessions each day, as I said. And so if you want to learn from one of my biggest mistakes, hang out in the good space for a little longer. And when you find something that works, like see how you can really embed that, make it stick, find your feet at that level and with that strategy and at that stage before getting itchy to move on to the next one. As I like to say often, I make mistakes so that you don't have to. Now, the last thing I want to address is a common question that people ask is, but then if you've been on Facebook for 20 minutes in the morning doing all of this posting, didn't you have like a ton of notifications or comments to reply back to or messages to answer? And the answer to that is yes, but I found that either I was able to do that here and there just on my phone. Like when I was waiting for the kettle to boil, I'd just check and see if I've got any comments and reply to them. I turned my notifications off to the extent where I only got notified of things I needed to action. So I don't get notified if someone likes something that I've done. I didn't get notified, if people shared something of mine. I only got notified if people commented on something of mine or sent me a message or commented back to one of my comments. And so even if I commented on someone else's post, and then you know how sometimes you get notified other people commented on this post as well, I had that turned off. And so I only ever had notifications if people were actively engaging with me in particular. And so because I did it that way, it was very quick for me to be just while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, make a cup of tea. I'll just quickly see if there's any notifications, any comments, anything that I need to reply to. And also, if I didn't have a couple of times during the day that I could check that stuff just on my phone, I would, as part of my end of day routine, set a little egg timer. So I had an hourglass egg timer thing, and I would flip the egg timer over, and I would just quickly go. It was a 5-minute one. It was one of those bigger hourglass ones. And so I would just flip that over, and in that 5 minutes, I would go and respond to as many of those notifications as I could. And if I couldn't reply to all the messages, I would just say, thank you so much for sending this through. I'm finishing up for today, but I'll reply to this first thing in the morning. And so I would just make that part of my 20 minutes the next day. But when you've got that limited time that you give your social strategy, honestly, you just get really efficient. Like I got really good at giving brilliant answers to people's questions in Facebook groups in a minute. I got really good at looking for things where I would be able to answer and add value and doing that super quickly. So I think that sometimes we have this belief that it's going to be so overwhelming and there's going to be so many questions that people ask and it's going to be so hard, but like we'll fix it when we get there. If you get to the point where you're getting so many notifications and so many messages from potential clients that you feel overwhelmed, well, we'll do something about it. But if I ever get to the point where I feel like I've got too many leads or I'm getting too many emails, I can solve that then and I can change my approach then. But I am beyond 10 years in business now and I've still never got to the point where it's not worth it for me to engage with my audience. It's not worth it for me to answer people's emails. I know that when I respond to people's messages and I answer people's emails and I do it in a boundaried way, I don't give free coaching on emails or free coaching in the DMs, but I'm responsive and I answer people's questions and I'm not going to prevent someone from buying an entire group mentorship program from me simply because I refuse to tell them what platform I use for my course or something. So I'm very open and I do answer people's questions, and it's worth my time. I know that when I do that, I'm building a relationship, I'm building trust, and that's something no one else can do on my behalf. No one else can do that for me. And so to this day, that is still one of the most effective uses of my time compared to everything else I could possibly be doing. And to this day, I still am not on Facebook very much. I'm not on social media very much. I am on Instagram a lot watching dog videos and reels about Taylor Swift and the Eras tour, but there is very little that I do on Instagram for business. I basically do nothing except reply to people's messages. And my Facebook time is probably even less now. So I'm not in other people's Facebook groups posting and promoting these days. I use Facebook ads more consistently for audience growth and lead generation and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, like I got to the point, like the whole point of doing a strategy like this is not that you're going to do it forever. It's giving you the foundations and the results and the income that you need to now have the resources and the assets and foundations in your business to be able to scale using other strategies. And so, sometimes people get worried that, I don't want to do that because I don't want to get overwhelmed, or I don't want to get, don't want to create a business in which I have to be on social media all the time. But it's not forever. It's just being on social media is one of the most effective ways that you can access and have conversations and build relationships with your ideal clients, your niche, so that you can be really curious and ask those questions and experiment with different offers and pieces of advice and listen to people's follow-up questions, because all of that is giving you the exact information that you need to refine those foundations, particularly your message. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. Your gift for today, being day 9 of Tashmas, is I am going to be giving away a VIP mentoring session with me. And I'd love to work with you on your marketing strategy for social media. Or if you think that maybe your foundations do need a little revision, that's something we could do on that session as well. So all you need to do if you'd like to enter to win a VIP session with me is go to the show notes of today's episode, tashcorbin.com/389. And there'll be a link to a post on socials where I'm asking you to share with me what is your biggest frustration with marketing your business on social media. And we can have a conversation about it. I might be able to provide some ways to make it easier, or maybe some questions that could help you find a strategy that relieves that frustration. Or we can have a conversation about, that is really frustrating. Sometimes it's just that's just how things are. And so if you come and let me know what is your biggest frustration with marketing on social media, that will not only get you an entry in to win one of these VIP one-on-one sessions, but also it will be an entry in our mega draw, which I will be drawing after day 12 of Tashmas, and that is getting very close. So make sure you head on over to those show notes, come and be part of the conversation. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. I'll be back in your ears tomorrow for day 10 of Tashmas. Bye for now.
Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.